The phone rang at 3 in the morning, yanking me from deep sleep in my Lisbon apartment. A Portuguese police liaison spoke broken English, explaining that my parents, Gary and Linda, along with my brother Travis, sat in San Diego County Jail for breaking and entering. The Morrison family had called police after finding strangers moving furniture into their home. My stomach plummeted as the officer described how my family claimed ownership of the property. I knew exactly what had happened. They had moved Travis into my condo, completely unaware I had sold it 6 weeks earlier. My hands trembled as I ended the call, staring out at the cobblestone streets of Alfama below my window. The irony crushed me. I had escaped to Portugal to build a new life free from the suffocating web of family drama that had consumed my 20s. Now sitting 4,000 miles away, I was still tangled in their chaos. The decision to leave America had not come lightly. For 5 grueling years, I worked 60-hour weeks as a software engineer at TechFlow Solutions, a startup specializing in cloud infrastructure. Every spare dollar went toward my dream, a 2-bedroom condo in downtown San Diego's Gaslamp Quarter. The building offered stunning views of the harbor, and my unit on the 15th floor became my sanctuary. After endless days debugging code and managing client crises. While I sacrificed social life and weekends for my goals, my 25-year-old brother Travis drifted through life like autumn leaves caught in wind. His latest venture, a cryptocurrency trading course called Digital Fortune Academy, promised students they could earn 6 figures in 3 months. The elaborate website featured Travis in expensive suits, standing beside rented Lamborghinis, selling dreams to desperate people seeking financial freedom. When the Federal Trade Commission shut down his operation for fraudulent advertising, Travis faced $50,000 in fines and restitution. Our parents, Gary and Linda, immediately shifted into crisis mode. Gary, who had spent 30 years delivering mail before retiring, possessed the stubborn determination that came from decades of government service. Linda, a substitute teacher at 3 different elementary schools, approached every problem with maternal intensity that bordered on obsession. They cornered me during Thanksgiving dinner at their modest ranch house in Chula Vista. The familiar smell of Linda's dry turkey filled the cramped dining room as Gary cleared his throat with the authority he once used addressing postal workers. "Dayton, your brother needs help," he announced, cutting straight to business. "This legal trouble will ruin his credit for years. He cannot afford rent anywhere decent." Linda dabbed her eyes with a napkin, her voice quavering with practiced emotion. "Family has to stick together during hard times. You have that beautiful spare bedroom just sitting empty." I set down my fork, choosing words carefully. "Travis can stay for 2 weeks maximum while he figures out next steps. My home office needs that space for client calls and equipment." Travis leaned back in his chair, wearing the same smirk I remembered from childhood when he knew our parents would fight his battles. His unwashed hair hung past his ears, and pizza stains decorated his wrinkled t-shirt advertising some defunct tech startup. "Come on, bro," he said with mock casualness. "You know you will cave eventually. You always do what mom and dad want." The casual arrogance in his voice triggered something deep within me. In that moment, I saw my future clearly, years of enabling his failures, while my own dreams withered under family obligations. That night, I researched Portuguese residency requirements and contacted Marcus Chen, an immigration attorney specializing in digital nomad visas. "Portugal offers excellent opportunities for remote workers," Marcus explained during our consultation. "The D7 visa allows you to live there while maintaining American clients. Processing takes 60 to 90 days. Simultaneously, I reached out to Beverly Martinez, the real estate agent who had helped me purchase the condo 3 years earlier. Her enthusiasm for a potential sale surprised me. "The Gaslamp Quarter market is incredibly hot right now," she said, reviewing comparable properties on her tablet. "Your unit should sell within 30 days, possibly over asking price." I kept both decisions secret, knowing any hint would trigger an avalanche of family manipulation. Gary and Linda excelled at emotional warfare, wielding guilt and obligation like precision instruments. They had trained Travis to view me as his personal safety net, and breaking that pattern required complete commitment. The visa application demanded extensive documentation, employment verification, bank statements, health insurance proof, criminal background checks. Each form represented another step toward freedom, another barrier between myself and the expectations that had defined my adult life. Beverly scheduled professional photography and staged the condo beautifully. Potential buyers loved the harbor views and modern appliances. Within 2 weeks, we received 4 offers, including one $15,000 above asking price from James and Sarah Morrison, a marine biologist and pediatric nurse seeking their first home together. They have excellent credit and substantial savings, Beverly reported. Their 8-year-old daughter Emma is already excited about her new bedroom. I accepted their offer, immediately scheduling closing for 6 weeks later. Meanwhile, my visa approval arrived faster than expected, allowing me to book flights to Lisbon for early December. The deception required careful planning. I told my parents I was taking extended vacation time to explore potential European clients, keeping details vague. When they pressed for specifics, I mentioned visiting several countries for business development opportunities. "Just make sure you are back for Christmas," Linda insisted during our final phone call. "Travis will want to celebrate his first holiday in his new stable housing situation." Her words carried an ominous undertone I chose to ignore. 2 days before my departure, my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, knocked on my door with disturbing news. Mrs. Patterson, a retired librarian in her 70s, possessed the sharp observation skills of someone who had spent decades managing children. Her silver hair was always perfectly styled, and she treated the building's security like a personal responsibility. "Dayton, I hope you do not mind me mentioning this." She began hesitantly adjusting her reading glasses. "I saw your mother at Fletcher's Hardware last month standing at the key cutting machine with what looked like your keychain." My blood turned cold. "Are you certain it was my mother?" "Absolutely. She was comparing each key carefully, making sure the copies matched perfectly. When she noticed me watching, she said something about needing spares for emergencies." The revelation hit me like physical force. My parents had been planning this invasion for months, systematically preparing to move Travis into my home, regardless of my permission. The fake emergency story, the theatrical guilt trips, the family pressure. Everything had been orchestrated theater designed to make me compliant. I had escaped just in time. The next morning, my phone buzzed relentlessly as the full scope of the disaster unfolded through urgent calls from Marcus Beverly and eventually Detective Rodriguez from San Diego Police Department. Each conversation added another layer to the nightmare my parents had created. "Dayton, we have a serious situation." Marcus began his usual professional calm strained. "Your parents forced entry into the Morrison property yesterday afternoon. The entire incident was captured on security cameras." Beverly's voice trembled with barely controlled anger when she called 15 minutes later. "In 20 years of real estate, I have never encountered anything like this. The Morrison family is traumatized. Their daughter cannot stop crying." Detective Rodriguez delivered the facts with clinical precision, reading from the incident report like a court clerk announcing charges. At approximately 2:30 p.m. yesterday, Gary Wilson used bolt cutters to remove the chain lock on the front gate at 1540 Harbor View Drive, Unit 1503. 3 subjects then proceeded to move furniture and personal belongings into the residence despite vocal protests from the legal occupants. The security footage told a chilling story of calculated invasion. Gary emerged from a rented moving truck wearing work gloves and carrying heavy-duty tools. His methodical approach suggested extensive preparation, cutting through the gate lock with practiced efficiency while Linda directed 2 hired movers toward the building entrance. Travis appeared genuinely confused in the footage, repeatedly looking to his parents for guidance, as they confidently led him toward what they claimed was his new home. He carried boxes marked gaming setup and Travis bedroom, suggesting they had been planning this transition for weeks. James Morrison, a soft-spoken marine biologist conducting research on coastal ecosystem recovery, confronted the intruders with remarkable composure considering the circumstances. His wife Sarah, still wearing scrubs from her hospital shift, clutched their daughter Emma protectively while demanding explanations. "This is our home," James stated firmly in the footage. "You need to leave immediately." Gary's response revealed the depth of his delusion and entitlement. Drawing himself to full height with the authority he once commanded at postal facilities, he waved a folder of documents with theatrical conviction. "We have legal right to this property," he declared loudly enough for neighbors to hear. "My son Dayton gave us power of attorney while he handles business overseas. You people are illegally occupying private family real estate." Linda's performance was equally disturbing, combining crocodile tears with aggressive accusations. She claimed the Morrison family had somehow tricked the property management company and were attempting to steal the condo through fraudulent paperwork. "My son is homeless because of your lies," she sobbed dramatically. "How can you sleep at night knowing you are destroying a young man's life?" The most heartbreaking part involved 8-year-old Emma Morrison. Travis had walked directly into her carefully decorated playroom, immediately beginning to set up his gaming equipment without acknowledging her presence. When Emma asked why strangers were moving her toys, Travis responded with casual dismissal. "This is my room now, kid," he said, unpacking a massive gaming monitor. "You will have to find somewhere else to play. Maybe your parents can set up a corner in the living room." Emma burst into tears, running to her mother, while Travis continued arranging his belongings as if the child's distress was merely an inconvenience. The footage showed him positioning his gaming chair directly where Emma's small desk had been, forcing Sarah Morrison to quickly gather her daughter's artwork and school supplies. Sarah Morrison's statement to police revealed the psychological impact of the invasion. As a pediatric nurse, she understood childhood trauma intimately, and watching strangers disrupt her daughter's sense of safety in their own home triggered professional and maternal outrage. "Emma keeps asking if the bad people will come back," Sarah explained to Detective Rodriguez. "She cannot understand why adults would force their way into our house and take her things. The trust and security she felt in her own bedroom has been completely destroyed." James Morrison's scientific training helped him document everything methodically. His statement included precise timestamps, detailed descriptions of the intruder's behavior, and careful notation of property damage caused by the moving process. "They damaged the hardwood floors, dragging in a king-size bed frame," James reported. "The dining room table has scratches from where they moved it aside to make room for gaming equipment. Most concerning is the psychological impact on our daughter, who now associates her own home with invasion and violation." The Morrison family had barricaded themselves in the master bedroom using furniture to block the door while calling 911. The emergency recording captured Emma's sobs in the background as Sarah explained their terrifying situation to the dispatcher. "3 adults broke into our home and are moving in furniture," Sarah stated with forced calm. "They claim to own the property, but we bought this condo 6 weeks ago. We have all the legal documentation. Please send help immediately." When police arrived, Gary maintained his aggressive stance, demanding they arrest the Morrison family for trespassing. He produced a stack of documents that included outdated utility bills, copies of my old lease agreements, and forged power of attorney paperwork bearing my supposedly notarized signature. Detective Rodriguez discovered the fraud immediately. "The notarization was clearly falsified," he explained during our call. "The supposed witness signatures belong to people who do not exist, and the document formatting was amateurish. Your parents are facing serious felony charges." The detective revealed another disturbing detail that explained Travis's genuine confusion during the incident. "My parents had convinced him that I had secretly arranged this housing situation, but was too embarrassed about my mental breakdown to communicate directly." Travis believed the Morrison family were squatters who had illegally occupied your condo while you were overseas. Detective Rodriguez continued. Your parents told him that you were too emotionally unstable to handle the eviction yourself, so they were helping resolve the situation on your behalf. This manipulation explained Travis's casual attitude during the invasion. From his perspective, he was rightfully reclaiming stolen property with his parents' legal assistance. The Morrison family's distress seemed like the predictable reaction of criminals caught in their illegal scheme. Linda had crafted an elaborate psychological narrative to justify their actions. She told Travis that my sudden departure to Europe was actually a nervous breakdown triggered by work stress and family pressure. In her version, I was too proud to ask for help directly, but desperately needed them to stabilize my living situation until I recovered. Your brother is crying for help in the only way he knows how, Linda had explained to Travis. By giving us the keys and moving overseas, he is asking us to take care of his responsibilities until he gets better. The lies were so intricate and emotionally manipulative that Travis had no reason to doubt their authenticity. His lifelong dependence on our parents' guidance made him particularly susceptible to their fiction, especially when it cast him as the victim rather than the problem. When police arrested all three of them, Travis's confusion turned to panic as reality shattered his parents' carefully constructed narrative. For the first time in his adult life, he was forced to confront the possibility that Gary and Linda might not be the wise protectors he had always believed them to be. The investigation revealed a conspiracy far more elaborate than I had imagined, extending back months and involving multiple layers of deception that implicated friends, family, and community members. Detective Rodriguez contacted me directly from San Diego Police Headquarters, his voice carrying the weariness of an officer who had seen every form of human manipulation. Mr. Wilson, we need to discuss the extent of your family's planning. He began, papers rustling in the background. This was not some impulsive decision. They have been laying groundwork for this operation since early September. The detectives' files contained evidence of systematic fraud that would have impressed organized crime investigators. Gary and Linda had researched California tenant rights, extensively studying squatter laws and property disputes to construct their elaborate justification. They visited multiple legal aid clinics, posing as concerned parents seeking advice about helping an adult child with property issues. They consulted 3 different attorneys, each time presenting slightly different versions of your situation, Detective Rodriguez explained. They claimed you had verbally agreed to let Travis live in the condo, but were too proud to formalize the arrangement. They asked about power of attorney requirements and emergency property access rights. Linda had been particularly thorough in her research, creating files of printed articles about family property disputes and adult children's housing responsibilities. Her notebook contained detailed timelines, contact information for moving companies, and even measurements of Travis's furniture to ensure everything would fit in the condo. The forgery operation was more sophisticated than the detective initially realized. Gary had purchased professional-grade document templates online, studying notarization procedures and legal formatting requirements. He practiced my signature dozens of times, using samples from birthday cards and Christmas notes I had sent over the years. Your father created an entire false identity for the notary witness, Detective Rodriguez continued. He used the name Margaret Thompson, complete with a fake address and notary seal, purchased from a fraudulent website. If the Morrison family had not called police immediately, he might have successfully convinced other officials of the document's authenticity. The psychological manipulation extended throughout their social network, creating a web of complicit enablers who unknowingly supported their narrative. They told neighbors they were helping me manage my property while I recovered from exhaustion overseas. Linda confided in her teacher colleagues that I was struggling with depression and had asked them to care for Travis during my absence. My Aunt Patricia, Gary's sister, called me that afternoon with tears in her voice and accusations in her tone. She had been completely deceived by their performance and felt personally betrayed by my supposed abandonment of family responsibilities. Dayton. I cannot believe you would leave Travis homeless without telling anyone, she sobbed through the phone connection. Your mother called me last week saying you had stopped returning their calls and Travis was sleeping in his car. She said they were worried you might hurt yourself if they pressed too hard about helping your brother. The fabrication was breathtakingly comprehensive. My parents had created an entirely fictional version of my mental state, complete with specific incidents and concerning behaviors that never occurred. They told Patricia I had been sending strange, rambling emails about escaping my responsibilities and starting over in Europe. Linda showed me text messages where you supposedly admitted feeling overwhelmed by family expectations. Patricia continued. She said you begged them to handle Travis's housing situation because you could not cope with the pressure anymore. I realized they had been intercepting my communications systematically. The text messages Patricia described were completely fabricated, but they aligned perfectly with the emotional manipulation tactics my parents had perfected over decades of managing family dynamics. Uncle Robert, Gary's younger brother, who worked as a construction foreman, called 30 minutes later with even more disturbing revelations. Gary had borrowed $1,500 from him in October, claiming I needed emergency legal assistance but was too embarrassed to ask family members directly. He said you were facing some kind of property dispute and needed attorney fees. Robert explained, his voice heavy with betrayal. I wrote him a check immediately because I thought you were in trouble. Now I find out the whole story was lies. The financial fraud went deeper than borrowed money. Gary had been systematically accessing my personal information for months, using family knowledge to answer security questions and reset account passwords. He had successfully changed my mailing address, with several institutions redirecting bank statements and legal documents to his house. Your parents were intercepting mail from your bank insurance company and the county tax office, Detective Rodriguez revealed during our second conversation. They used this information to maintain their illusion of authority over your property long after you sold it. The mail redirection explained how they had maintained their deception so effectively. When Beverly processed the sale paperwork, final documents, and tax information went to Gary and Linda's address instead of reaching me in Portugal. They were receiving my property tax bills, insurance cancellation notices, and even correspondence from the Homeowners Association. Linda had been answering phone calls intended for me, using her intimate knowledge of my life to convince callers she was authorized to receive information. She spoke with my insurance agent about policy changes, contacted utility companies about service transfers, and even communicated with building management about lease modifications. Your mother is remarkably convincing when she wants to be, the detective noted. Several officials told us they never doubted she was acting on your behalf. She knew enough personal details about your life and property to sound completely legitimate. The psychological warfare extended to Travis's preparation for the move. They had been conditioning him for weeks, describing the condo as temporary family property that I was selfishly hoarding during his time of need. They showed him online photos of the building, helped him measure furniture to fit the space, and even encouraged him to research nearby restaurants and entertainment options. Travis genuinely believed this arrangement was his legal right. Detective Rodriguez explained, your parents convinced him that family property should be shared during emergencies, and that your refusal to help was a temporary mental health issue that would resolve once you received professional treatment. The manipulation included subtle threats disguised as concern for my well-being. Linda told extended family members she was worried about my emotional stability and feared I might make dangerous decisions while living alone overseas. She suggested that forcing me to deal with Travis's housing crisis might actually help me regain perspective and reconnect with family values. Gary took a more aggressive approach, telling his friends that I had always been selfish and needed to learn responsibility through consequences. He framed the condo invasion as tough love, designed to teach me about family loyalty and mutual support. Your father convinced himself this was actually helping you mature, the detective observed. He described it as forcing you to honor commitments you had made but were too cowardly to fulfill. The most disturbing revelation came through social media evidence. Linda had been posting updates on Facebook about Travis's housing search, generating sympathy and support from community members who believed I was cruelly abandoning my struggling brother. Her posts painted me as successful but selfish, someone who had forgotten his family obligations in pursuit of personal pleasure. She created an entire public narrative where you were the villain and they were the heroes trying to save your brother from homelessness. Detective Rodriguez concluded. By the time they actually broke into the Morrison home, dozens of people in your community believed they were doing the right thing. The web of deception was so complete that even I began to doubt my own memories of events. Had I somehow given them mixed signals? Had my departure been more selfish than necessary? The psychological manipulation was designed to create exactly this uncertainty, making me question my own perceptions and feel guilty for protecting my boundaries. But the evidence was undeniable. My parents had orchestrated a months-long campaign of fraud, manipulation, and invasion that traumatized an innocent family and destroyed their own credibility within the community. Their actions were not motivated by love or desperation, but by a toxic combination of entitlement control and refusal to accept consequences for their enabling behavior. The truth was about to cost them everything. Gary's call from San Diego County Jail came at 2 a.m. Lisbon time, his voice carrying the same tone of righteous indignation he had used throughout my childhood when questioning my decisions. The scratchy connection could not disguise his complete lack of remorse as he launched into immediate demands rather than explanations or apologies. "Dayton, you need to wire bail money immediately," he commanded without preamble. "Linda and I are being held on $25,000 each. Travis needs $15,000. This whole situation is completely your fault for not communicating properly." I sat in my small Lisbon kitchen, watching sunrise paint the Tagus River gold, while listening to my father's delusional rant. The beauty of my new surroundings contrasted sharply with the ugly reality of family dysfunction, reaching across an ocean to grab at my peace. "Dad, I sold the condo legally 6 weeks ago," I stated clearly. "I never gave anyone permission to move Travis in. You broke into the Morrison family's home." "That is complete nonsense." Gary snapped, his voice rising with familiar aggression. "You are obviously confused about the timeline. We have documentation proving you arranged this housing situation for Travis before you left the country." The conversation revealed the depth of his psychological delusion. Gary genuinely believed his own fabricated narrative so completely that contradictory evidence seemed impossible to process. In his mind, my legal property sale was somehow invalid because it conflicted with his version of family obligations. You cannot just abandon your responsibilities because you had some kind of nervous breakdown. He continued using the same manipulative language Linda had perfected over decades. "Travis depends on you, and family comes first. That is how we raised you." Linda's voice came through the phone next, her tone shifting to the theatrical sobbing that had accompanied every family crisis since my childhood. Her performance was designed to trigger guilt responses, conditioned through years of emotional manipulation. "Dayton, please do not let pride destroy our family," she pleaded between calculated sobs. "Travis is talking about suicide. This arrest will ruin his life permanently. You have to tell the police this was all a misunderstanding." The suicide threat was particularly manipulative because Linda knew I would take any mention of self-harm seriously. She had used Travis's supposed fragile mental state as a weapon throughout his adult life, wielding the threat of his depression to control family dynamics and ensure his enabling continued. "He cannot handle jail," Linda continued dramatically. "The other inmates will hurt him. He has never been away from family support before. If something happens to him in there, You will never forgive yourself. I ended the call without promises, but the psychological assault continued through other channels. Within an hour, Patricia called again, this time armed with specific accusations and dramatic revelations about the family's current crisis. The whole community is talking about this scandal, she reported with breathless intensity. Gary and Linda's arrest made the local news. Their neighbors are shocked that such respectable people could be involved in breaking and entering. The public humiliation was destroying their carefully constructed reputation as pillars of the community. Gary's former co-workers at the Postal Service were sharing the news story on social media with expressions of disbelief and disappointment. Linda's principal had placed her on indefinite suspension from substitute teaching, pending the outcome of criminal proceedings. They told everyone you had given them permission. Patricia continued, her voice heavy with confused betrayal. Now people are saying they lied about everything. The family name is completely ruined. The Morrison family's attorney contacted me that same afternoon with news that elevated the consequences beyond criminal charges into potentially devastating civil liability. Attorney Catherine Walsh specialized in home invasion trauma cases and spoke with the clinical precision of someone who understood both legal and psychological damage. Mr. Wilson, my clients are pursuing maximum damages available under California law. She began without pleasantries. The psychological trauma inflicted on their daughter alone justifies significant compensation, but the property damage and ongoing security concerns create additional liability. The itemized damages request was staggering in its comprehensiveness. Emma Morrison required immediate counseling to address invasion trauma with projected therapy costs extending indefinitely into the future. Sarah Morrison had been forced to take unpaid leave from her hospital position due to stress-related symptoms affecting her patient care abilities. Mrs. Morrison is experiencing severe anxiety attacks that began immediately after the incident, Attorney Walsh explained. She cannot focus during medical procedures because she keeps imagining strangers forcing their way into her home. The hospital administration deemed her temporarily unfit for pediatric nursing duties. James Morrison's research equipment had suffered damage during the furniture moving process, disrupting a multi-year coastal ecosystem study funded by federal grants. His damaged laptop contained irreplaceable field data that set his research timeline back by months, potentially jeopardizing grant renewal and academic publications. The financial impact extends beyond immediate damages, the attorney continued. My clients are considering relocating due to ongoing security concerns, which would mean losing money on a home they purchased 6 weeks ago. The psychological violation of having strangers invade their private space may make continued residence impossible. The total compensation demand approached $65,000 when combining therapy costs, lost wages, property damage, research setbacks, and potential relocation expenses. Attorney Walsh made it clear that my parents bore full responsibility regardless of their motivations or mental state. California law holds trespassers liable for all damages resulting from illegal entry, she stated definitively. The fact that your parents genuinely believed they had authority does not reduce their legal responsibility for traumatizing my clients. The Morrison family had also contacted local media outlets, sharing their story as a warning about property fraud and family disputes that endanger innocent people. The news coverage portrayed them as hard-working professionals who saved for years to buy their first home, only to have their sense of safety destroyed by strangers with delusional entitlement. Travis's call from a separate holding cell revealed the psychological collapse occurring as his parents' narrative crumbled around him. His voice carried none of the casual arrogance I remembered from recent family gatherings, replaced instead by confused vulnerability and genuine hurt. Dayton, I do not understand what happened. He began hesitantly. Mom and Dad said you wanted me to live in the condo while you worked overseas. They showed me text messages where you supposedly agreed to everything. For the first time in years, Travis sounded like the confused little brother I remembered from childhood, rather than the entitled adult he had become through parental enabling. His questions revealed how completely he had been manipulated by Gary and Linda's elaborate deception. They said the Morrison people were illegal squatters who had tricked some kind of property management company. He continued with growing confusion. Dad had all these official-looking documents proving we had the right to be there. How was I supposed to know they were fake? The conversation exposed the depth of Travis's psychological dependence on our parents' guidance. At 25 years old, he had never developed the critical thinking skills necessary to question authority figures or verify information independently. His entire adult life had been managed by Gary and Linda, leaving him completely unprepared for situations requiring personal judgment. "I believed them because they are our parents," he said simply. "Why would they lie about something this serious? I thought I was finally getting stable housing and a chance to restart my life." The genuine hurt in his voice was devastating, because it represented the first crack in his lifelong trust in family authority. Travis was beginning to realize that the people he depended on most had manipulated him into committing crimes that would follow him for years. Detective Rodriguez called with the most shocking revelation, yet one that transformed my understanding of the entire situation, from family dysfunction to systematic financial fraud. His investigation had uncovered evidence of identity theft, extending back 6 months, revealing a pattern of criminal behavior far beyond the condo invasion. "Mr. Wilson, we found credit card statements in your father's possession showing charges in your name totaling $15,000. The detective reported with professional gravity. "The account was opened using your social security number and employment information, but all correspondence was directed to your parents' address." The credit card fraud explained how Travis's failed business ventures had been funded despite Gary and Linda's modest fixed income. They had been using my credit and employment history to secure financing for Travis's schemes without my knowledge or consent. The charges include business registration fees, website development costs, marketing expenses, and equipment purchases related to the cryptocurrency training program. Detective Rodriguez continued. "Your father has been making minimum payments to keep the account current, but the debt has been accumulating interest and damaging your credit score. The identity theft had been carefully orchestrated using family knowledge and intercepted mail. Gary possessed my social security number, employment history, and enough personal information to successfully apply for credit in my name. The mail redirection ensured that account statements and payment notices never reached me in Portugal. Your credit score has dropped significantly due to high utilization on this fraudulent account," the detective explained. "The damage to your credit history will take years to repair even after we resolve the criminal charges." The financial violation was somehow more personal than the condo invasion because it demonstrated premeditation and ongoing deception. Gary and Linda had been stealing my financial identity for months while presenting themselves as concerned parents worried about my well-being. This betrayal was not impulsive or emotionally driven, but calculated theft designed to fund their enabling of Travis while protecting their own financial stability. They had turned their son into an unwitting accomplice while systematically destroying my credit and financial future. The truth was finally clear. My parents were not misguided family members struggling with difficult circumstances, but systematic criminals who used family relationships to justify fraud, manipulation, and theft. Their actions had traumatized innocent people, destroyed community trust, and violated every boundary of decent human behavior. The time for sympathy and understanding had ended. Justice demanded consequences, and I was finally prepared to ensure they faced every one. The decision crystallized with surprising clarity as I stood on my Lisbon apartment balcony, watching morning commuters navigate the narrow streets below. For 30 years, I had been trained to prioritize family harmony over personal well-being to enable destructive behavior rather than confront uncomfortable truths. That pattern ended today. I called attorney Marcus Chen first, my voice steady with newfound resolve as I outlined my intentions to pursue every available legal remedy. Marcus had handled my visa paperwork with quiet efficiency, but this conversation revealed a different side of his practice. I want to file identity theft charges against Gary Wilson, I stated without preamble. I want to pursue civil damages for financial fraud. I want to ensure he faces maximum consequences for using my credit without permission. Marcus responded with professional enthusiasm that suggested he had been waiting for this conversation. The evidence is overwhelming, Dayton. Credit card fraud using stolen identity information carries serious federal penalties. Your father could face 5 years in prison and substantial fines. The criminal attorney referral came within an hour. Patricia Williams practiced white-collar criminal defense, but had recently shifted focus toward representing fraud victims seeking maximum prosecution. Her reputation for aggressive advocacy made her perfect for ensuring my parents faced appropriate consequences. Mr. Wilson, your case represents multiple felonies committed over an extended period. Attorney Williams explained during our video consultation. We are dealing with identity theft, mail fraud, breaking and entering criminal impersonation, and conspiracy charges. The evidence is documented extensively. I authorized Attorney Williams to coordinate with Detective Rodriguez, ensuring that criminal prosecutors received complete information about the financial fraud alongside the property invasion charges. The systematic nature of their crimes demanded systematic legal response. The restraining order application was filed immediately, prohibiting Gary, Linda, and Travis from contacting me directly or indirectly through third parties. Attorney Williams included social media monitoring, ensuring they could not continue their public manipulation campaign while legal proceedings developed. We are also pursuing asset seizure to ensure restitution funds remain available, she continued. Your parents will be required to liquidate assets if necessary to compensate both you and the Morrison family for damages caused by their criminal actions. Beverly Martinez called that afternoon with news that transformed my understanding of the timeline. Her investigation revealed that Gary had been monitoring the sale process much more extensively than anyone realized, using information gathered through fraudulent phone calls to track every step of the property transfer. Dayton, your father called our office 17 times over 6 weeks pretending to be you, Beverly revealed with barely controlled anger. He used personal information to convince our staff he was the legitimate seller seeking updates on closing procedures. The impersonation included detailed questions about buyer financing inspection results and closing date scheduling. Gary had been gathering intelligence to time Travis's move-in for maximum impact, ensuring the Morrison family would be established residents when the invasion occurred. He tried to delay the closing 3 different times, claiming you had concerns about buyer qualifications, Beverly continued. Our office manager almost canceled the sale twice because the caller sounded so convincing when describing supposed problems with the transaction. The revelation explained Gary's confidence during the police confrontation. He possessed detailed knowledge of the sale timeline, buyer information, and property transfer procedures gathered through systematic deception. His fraudulent documents were supplemented by genuine information obtained through identity theft and misrepresentation. I authorized Beverly to pursue civil charges against Gary for interference with real estate transactions, adding another layer of legal consequences to his growing list of criminal violations. The systematic nature of his deception demonstrated intent to commit multiple crimes rather than simple family misunderstanding. Uncle Robert called that evening with an apology that carried genuine remorse and valuable information about extended family reactions. His construction experience had taught him to recognize when projects were built on false foundations, and he was beginning to see parallel patterns in Gary's recent behavior. Dayton, I owe you a massive apology. He began with the straightforward honesty that characterized his personality. I should have questioned Gary's story about you needing emergency money. The whole thing never made sense, but I trusted my brother instead of thinking critically. Robert's investigation within family networks revealed the extent of Gary and Linda's manipulation campaign among relatives, friends, and community members. Their systematic lying had created widespread belief in fictional narratives about my mental health, financial problems, and irresponsible behavior. They told everyone different versions of the same basic story, Robert explained. You were having a breakdown, Travis was homeless, and they were heroically managing crisis situations you could not handle yourself. People believed them because they had no reason to doubt family members. The family reputation rehabilitation required systematic truth-telling to counter months of systematic lies. Robert volunteered to contact every relative Gary and Linda had deceived, providing documented evidence of their fraud and explaining the real timeline of events. I am calling everyone tonight, Robert promised. Aunt Margaret, cousin Jessica, the whole network. They need to know that Gary and Linda are criminals, not heroes. The family name can survive this, but only if we confront the truth honestly. My landlord, Miguel, emerged as an unexpected source of wisdom and practical support during the crisis. His own experience with toxic family relationships had taught him to recognize manipulation patterns and respond with appropriate boundaries. In Portugal, we have saying, Miguel explained in his careful English during our evening conversation, family is like garden. Sometimes you must remove poison plants to save healthy ones. Miguel's perspective carried the weight of someone who had successfully navigated similar challenges without losing his essential humanity. His calm presence helped ground my emotional responses and maintain focus on constructive action rather than reactive anger. You make good choice leaving America, he continued thoughtfully. Sometimes distance is only way to see clearly. Your parents, they cannot control what they cannot reach. The practical support extended beyond emotional guidance. Miguel helped me navigate Portuguese legal procedures for international document notarization, ensuring that American authorities received properly authenticated statements supporting my case. His network of expatriate friends included retired American lawyers who provided informal consultation about cross-border legal proceedings. Their collective experience helped me understand timelines, procedures, and strategic considerations for pursuing justice while living overseas. That night, I drafted a comprehensive statement for Detective Rodriguez documenting every instance of family manipulation I could remember, from childhood through the present crisis. The pattern recognition exercise revealed decades of boundary violations, financial control, and emotional manipulation that had conditioned me to accept unacceptable behavior. The statement included specific examples of Gary's authoritarian control techniques, Linda's emotional manipulation tactics, and their systematic enabling of Travis's irresponsible behavior. Each incident represented a building block in their foundation of family dysfunction. Writing the statement felt like archaeological work, excavating layers of normalized toxicity that had shaped my adult relationships and decision-making patterns. The process of class was emotionally draining, but ultimately liberating, replacing years of confused guilt with clear understanding of systematic manipulation. For the first time in my life, I was fighting back against family dysfunction with legal tools, professional support, and international distance that protected me from direct emotional manipulation. The decision to pursue maximum consequences felt not vengeful but necessary for breaking generational patterns of enabling and control. Justice was no longer an abstract concept, but a concrete goal supported by evidence, legal representation, and personal commitment to protecting innocent people from my family's toxic behavior patterns. The war for my independence was finally beginning. The legal system moved with surprising swiftness once the full scope of Gary and Linda's criminal enterprise became clear to prosecutors. District Attorney Margaret Thompson, no relation to their fictional notary witness, specialized in family fraud cases and recognized the systematic nature of their crimes immediately. Your parents represent a textbook example of multi-generational manipulation, escalating to serious felonies, she explained during our video conference. We are treating this as organized criminal activity rather than simple family dysfunction. The charges filed were comprehensive and devastating. Gary faced 7 felony counts, including identity theft, mail fraud, criminal impersonation breaking, and entering conspiracy and interference with real estate transactions. Linda received 6 felony charges, while Travis was offered a reduced plea agreement contingent on completing court-mandated therapy and testifying about his parents' manipulation. The judge was particularly disturbed by the child trauma aspect. District Attorney Thompson continued, "Invading a home where an 8-year-old lived elevates this from property crime to something much more serious in the court's perspective." Judge Patricia Morrison, ironically sharing a surname with the victims, had built her judicial reputation on protecting family stability and child welfare. Her sentencing approach focused on consequences that would prevent similar crimes while addressing underlying psychological dysfunction. The community response was swift and merciless. Gary's former postal colleagues launched an informal investigation revealing years of suspicious behavior, including unauthorized access to mail, excessive sick leave usage, and inappropriate discussions about family financial pressures with co-workers. "Your father had been bragging about Travis's business success for months," reported Supervisor Janet Adams during her statement to police. "He claimed his son was making 6-figure income from cryptocurrency trading and was about to buy investment properties. We all wondered how a failed online course could generate that kind of money." Linda's teaching career ended permanently when background check reviews triggered automatic termination from school district substitute lists. Principal Karen Foster confirmed that Linda had been asking inappropriate questions about student family situations and property ownership during her assignments. She seemed obsessed with real estate and family financial arrangements, Principal Foster explained in her official statement. Several teachers reported uncomfortable conversations where Linda pressed for personal information about their housing situations and family property ownership. The revelation suggested their criminal thinking extended beyond immediate family manipulation to potential targeting of professional contacts for future schemes. Their systematic approach to gathering personal information represented ongoing threat assessment rather than isolated family crisis. Travis's arrest proved to be a catalyst for genuine psychological breakthrough rather than continued victimization. The court-appointed therapist, Dr. Sarah Williams, specialized in family dependency disorders and quickly recognized his potential for recovery with appropriate intervention. Travis exhibits classic symptoms of learned helplessness combined with arrested emotional development, Dr. Williams reported to the court. His parents systematically prevented him from developing adult decision-making skills, but the underlying capacity for independent functioning remains intact. The therapy sessions revealed the extent of Gary and Linda's psychological control over Travis throughout his adult life. They had managed his finances, controlled his social relationships, and made all significant decisions while maintaining the illusion that he was pursuing independent goals. They convinced him that his business failures were due to market conditions rather than poor planning, Dr. Williams continued. Every setback was reframed as external circumstances requiring increased family support rather than personal learning opportunities. Travis's letter to the court, submitted as part of his plea agreement, demonstrated remarkable insight for someone emerging from decades of psychological manipulation. His handwriting showed careful thought and genuine remorse, rather than continued victimization narratives. Your Honor, I am beginning to understand how my parents used me as an excuse for their own criminal behavior, he wrote with surprising clarity. They convinced me that I was entitled to support from my brother, while hiding the fact that they were stealing from him to provide that support. The letter included specific examples of lies Gary and Linda had told him about my financial situation, emotional state, and supposed agreements to provide housing assistance. Travis was discovering that nearly every aspect of his recent family interactions had been manipulated fiction. I realize now that my parents were not protecting me from consequences, but protecting themselves from having to watch me grow up, he continued. Their enabling prevented me from learning to handle difficulties independently and made me complicit in crimes I never would have supported if I understood the truth. The Morrison family's victim impact statement provided devastating testimony about the ongoing psychological effects of the invasion. Emma Morrison's artwork from therapy sessions showed stick figures of scared children hiding from adult strangers, revealing trauma that would require years of professional intervention. My daughter asks every night if the bad people will come back. Sarah Morrison testified with quiet dignity. She checks the locks obsessively and cannot sleep without lights on. The trust and security she felt in her own home has been destroyed by adults who should have known better. James Morrison's research setback had ripple effects throughout his academic department, affecting grant funding, graduate student projects, and collaborative research initiatives. The invasion damages extended far beyond their immediate family to impact professional colleagues and scientific progress. The community humiliation was comprehensive and lasting. Local news coverage included interviews with neighbors expressing shock and betrayal at discovering the respected family next door were systematic criminals. Property values in their subdivision dropped temporarily due to association with criminal activity. Gary and Linda's closest friends distanced themselves completely, fearing legal complications and social stigma. Their church community expelled them from leadership positions and requested they seek spiritual counseling before returning to regular services. The financial restitution requirements were devastating but appropriate. Gary and Linda were ordered to pay $65,000 to the Morrison family, $15,000 to repair my credit damage, plus court costs, legal fees, and ongoing monitoring expenses. They will need to liquidate their home equity and retirement savings to meet restitution requirements, District Attorney Thompson reported with satisfaction. The financial consequences will follow them for decades, ensuring they cannot easily rebuild the comfortable lifestyle that enabled their criminal thinking. My grandmother's phone call came as the biggest surprise of the legal proceedings, revealing investigation skills that impressed even Detective Rodriguez. At 82 years old, Martha Wilson had been quietly conducting her own inquiry into family financial irregularities. Dayton. I've been watching Gary's spending patterns for 2 years, she announced with the sharp intelligence that had helped her manage family finances through 6 decades of marriage. His explanations about Travis's business success never made mathematical sense. Her personal investigation revealed that Gary had been stealing small amounts from her checking account for months, using his power of attorney authority to transfer funds for Travis's failed ventures. The systematic theft totaled nearly $8,000 over 18 months. I kept detailed records because something felt wrong, Grandmother Martha continued with quiet determination. Gary was always vague about where the money went, claiming emergency expenses that never seemed to resolve permanently. Her decision to change her will was swift and decisive. Gary was removed entirely as beneficiary and executor, with his inheritance redirected to a family education fund managed by Uncle Robert. Travis remained in the will, but with strict conditions requiring employment history and financial responsibility documentation. You are now the primary beneficiary because you showed courage to break this destructive pattern, she announced with finality. Family money should go to family members who make responsible choices, not criminals who manipulate relatives. The psychological impact of comprehensive consequences was already visible in Gary and Linda's behavior during court appearances. Their confident arrogance had been replaced by defeated confusion as their carefully constructed self-image crumbled under legal and social pressure. They are beginning to understand that their actions have permanent consequences that cannot be manipulated away, District Attorney Thompson observed. For the first time in their lives, they face accountability that extends beyond family dynamics to legal and community standards. The sentencing phase would determine whether they received prison time or probation. But the damage to their reputation, finances, and family relationships was already irreversible. Their criminal behavior had destroyed the comfortable retirement they had planned and isolated them from community support systems. Justice was proving to be both swift and thorough, addressing not only immediate crimes, but underlying patterns of manipulation and enabling that had damaged multiple generations of family relationships. The truth was finally setting everyone free. 6 months later, I stood on the rooftop terrace of my new apartment in Príncipe Real, watching sunset paint Lisbon's 7 hills in shades of gold and rose. The legal proceedings had concluded with sentences that satisfied both justice and mercy. Gary and Linda received 2 years probation, with extensive community service requirements, while Travis was completing his final month of court-mandated therapy. The transformation in my daily life was profound and peaceful. My Portuguese residency had progressed smoothly, with client relationships strengthening as my remote work expanded beyond American companies to include European startups seeking cloud infrastructure expertise. The professional growth came naturally when family crisis no longer consumed mental energy that belonged to creative problem solving. Ana Correa entered my life through the language exchange program Miguel had recommended for improving my Portuguese conversation skills. An architect specializing in historic building renovation, she possessed the quiet confidence of someone who understood both preserving valuable foundations and replacing structures that no longer served their purpose. "Your family story helped me understand my own boundaries better," she admitted during one of our evening walks along the Tagus riverfront. "Sometimes we think love means accepting unacceptable behavior, but real love requires honest accountability." Our relationship developed with the careful attention she brought to architectural restoration projects, building trust through consistent actions rather than dramatic gestures. Her perspective on family dynamics was shaped by Mediterranean culture that valued both loyalty and personal dignity. "In Portugal, we say that family is like wine," Ana explained with a smile that illuminated her entire face. "Good wine improves with age and care, but wine that has turned sour will only become more bitter with time. Sometimes you must start with fresh grapes." The Morrison family sent periodic updates that tracked Emma's recovery and their own healing process. The therapy had been successful, with Emma's artwork gradually shifting from fearful stick figures to confident drawings of her family, enjoying their home peacefully. "Emma wants you to know that the bad people cannot hurt anyone anymore," Sarah Morrison wrote in a card decorated with her daughter's colorful drawings. "She understands now that sometimes adults make very poor choices, but that most people are good and want to help rather than hurt others." James Morrison's research had recovered completely, with his ecosystem study producing groundbreaking results about coastal restoration that earned recognition from the National Science Foundation. Their home had been reclaimed as a sanctuary of safety and productivity, rather than a reminder of violation. Travis's letters arrived monthly, written in the careful handwriting of someone learning to express thoughts without parental editing for the first time. His progress through therapy was remarkable, revealing intelligence and creativity that had been suppressed by years of enabling and manipulation. "I have a job at Pacific Shipping Company loading containers," he wrote with obvious pride. "The work is physical and challenging, but I earn my own paycheck without depending on family assistance. My supervisor says I learn quickly and follow instructions well." The job represented his first legitimate employment since high school, providing structure and achievement that his various business schemes had promised but never delivered. His newfound independence was rebuilding self-respect that had been eroded by years of failure and family enabling. "Dr. Williams helped me understand that Mom and Dad were not protecting me, but protecting themselves from having to watch me struggle and grow." Travis continued with insight that surprised me. They prevented me from developing strength by removing all obstacles, which left me weak rather than supported. His relationship with Gary and Linda remained complicated, but bounded by healthy skepticism and professional guidance. Weekly family therapy sessions were helping all three of them understand destructive patterns while building new communication skills based on honesty rather than manipulation. Uncle Robert's visit to Portugal provided family connection without the toxic dynamics that had characterized previous relationships. His construction background helped him appreciate the renovation work Anna was directing on historic buildings throughout the city. "You built something beautiful here," he observed during our tour of Alfama's narrow streets and ancient churches. "Sometimes you have to tear down damaged structures completely before you can build something that will last." His work within the extended family had been successful, with most relatives now understanding the truth about Gary and Linda's criminal behavior. The family reputation was recovering through honest acknowledgement of problems rather than continued enabling or denial. "Aunt Patricia wants to visit next spring," Robert reported with cautious optimism. "She says she needs to apologize in person for believing their lies and pressuring you to enable Travis's irresponsible behavior." The financial recovery had progressed steadily with help from credit restoration specialists and legal assistance from Attorney Williams. My credit score was approaching pre-fraud levels, and the identity theft documentation ensured that Gary's fraudulent accounts would never affect my financial future. "The criminal conviction creates permanent protection," Attorney Williams explained during our final consultation. "Any future attempts to use your identity for fraudulent purposes will trigger automatic federal investigation and prosecution." My grandmother's estate planning changes had created unexpected opportunities for building positive family legacy. The education fund she established was already supporting two cousins' college expenses, while encouraging responsible financial planning among younger family members. "Martha Wilson was the smartest person in your family," Miguel observed with the directness that characterized Portuguese communication. "She understood that money should reward good choices, not enable destructive ones." Her letter, written in the careful script of someone who chose words, thoughtfully arrived on the anniversary of my departure from America. The envelope contained both blessing and challenge in language that connected past wisdom to future possibilities. "Dearest Dayton, you showed courage that reminded me of your grandfather during difficult times," she wrote. "He also understood that sometimes you must leave familiar places to find your authentic self. I am proud of the man you are becoming through your own choices rather than family expectations." The Christmas card from the Morrison family included a photograph of Emma smiling in her playroom, now decorated with artwork celebrating home as a place of safety and creativity. The transformation from invasion site to artistic sanctuary represented healing that extended beyond therapy to reclaim physical space as emotional foundation. Dr. Williams sent a professional assessment confirming that my decision to pursue legal consequences had been therapeutically beneficial for everyone involved, including Gary and Linda, who were finally receiving appropriate treatment for decades of manipulative behavior patterns. Family dysfunction often requires external intervention to break generational cycles, she concluded in her final report. "Your willingness to set boundaries and accept consequences created opportunities for authentic healing that enabling behavior could never provide." The sunset views from my terrace had become evening meditation time, allowing reflection on lessons learned through crisis and transformation. The beauty of my surroundings provided a daily reminder that life could be peaceful when built on authentic foundations, rather than family obligations that violated personal integrity. The most profound realization was understanding that love without boundaries becomes manipulation, and that protecting yourself from toxic behavior ultimately protects others by refusing to enable destructive patterns. Setting limits with family members is not betrayal but responsibility, creating space for genuine relationship rather than codependent dysfunction. I learned that geographical distance can provide psychological clarity impossible to achieve while surrounded by familiar manipulation tactics. Sometimes you must physically leave toxic environments before you can emotionally understand their damage to your well-being and decision-making capacity. True security comes from building authentic relationships with people who respect boundaries, rather than trying to earn acceptance from people who view your success as threat to their control. Family relationships must be earned through consistent respect and honesty, not demanded through guilt and obligation. The courage to stand alone temporarily creates space for building connections with people who appreciate rather than exploit your strengths. Independence is not selfishness, but foundation for interdependence based on choice rather than manipulation or fear. My story demonstrates that it is never too late to break generational cycles of dysfunction, but doing so requires accepting temporary discomfort of conflict and isolation. The alternative is lifetime participation in patterns that damage everyone, while helping no one grow beyond their limitations. As I watched the lights of Lisbon twinkle in the gathering darkness, I felt profound gratitude for the crisis that forced me to choose between enabling familiar toxicity and building something authentically mine. The choice had been difficult, but absolutely necessary for becoming the person I was meant to be. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and personal integrity? Share your story in the comments below and let me know how you found the courage to set boundaries with people you love. If this story resonated with your own experiences, please like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges. Share this with anyone who might need encouragement to prioritize their own well-being while still caring about family members. Thank you for listening, and remember that choosing yourself is not selfish, but essential for building authentic relationships based on respect rather than obligation.